We always define mastery to the standard. Questions that we ask ourselves across the building as we think about creating assessments that show us where the students stand. First, why? Why are we assessing? What is it we're out to know, and what are we going to use with the results that we get? What are we assessing? It's always aligned to a target, and we can trace back exactly this assessment item is checking for this kind of understanding from this learning target. We ask ourselves how we're going to assess. Are we doing something to kind of gauge where the class is in the middle of our class today? And then we maybe use a more individual assessment at the end to find out the progress of your individual son or daughter. And then we consider the importance of all the components of the learning as it fits into the bigger picture. Teachers have worked really hard and continue to work very hard on designing rubrics that will show whether a student has a beginning understanding of new learning, progressing towards mastery of new learning, the student has mastered the learning, or in many cases, the students have exceeded mastery and have gone above and beyond and have done something with the information beyond the mastered standard. Why? Because we know curriculums are aligned to prepare students for future studies. So we're always working and pushing towards mastery so that none of the enacted curriculum is lost. Let's look at some commonly asked questions that teachers and parents and students think about in a standards-based instructional and assessment atmosphere. First and foremost, if the teachers don't have grades, then how will my child and I know how he or she is doing? Well, the student's progress here at St. Bridget is always measured against the criteria of mastery for a given standard. So teachers will say, here's what's expected, here is the criteria you need to hit to master the expected learning. Here are the activities, instructional components that we're going to put together to help you learn and practice. And here will be the assessment then where we will look to see how you're making progress, finally to that summative assessment to check in and see how you've done after the unit is completed. And we know most importantly, we're going to provide feedback relative to mastery of the standards. This is another core component of a standards-based grading system that really works in favor of the student. And that is this. If we're always working towards mastering a core component of the curriculum, then every bit of feedback we provide the students is shaped around mastering that core part of the curriculum. And feedback is not kind of jumbled about with other things that we might look at, sort of getting ourselves off task as we assess. We know clearly that this is what we're looking for, and so the feedback that we provide is shaped around the performance we expect to see. Many times people will say, my child will be more motivated if he or she is earning a grade. Don't the grades motivate? We're going to take a close look at this one. First of all, I want to start by looking at this core component. There's definitely a difference between the purpose of a grade, which we use to report or communicate progress home to parents, to students, to guardians, to grandparents, and how you may use that information once you have it. Because in any given household, the grades that a student earns, they're privileged in certain ways. There are expectations that you all have for your sons and for your daughters. And so the uses of those grades, once they have been reported out, really falls upon you. And oftentimes, as the parent, as the grandparent, as the guardian that's in charge, we make decisions about what our expectations are for how our sons and daughters are going to do, and what we are going to do with the grades once we have them. And because that core component of it is inspired by us, we know that we play a part in the shaping of motivating our students to want to do well, whatever the reporting system is. If you value that your student is showing you he or she is mastering core components of the curriculum, and that's the goal that the student is shooting for, then there's an intrinsic and possibly an extrinsic motivator that's attached to that. If it comes from you that this is what you expect, regardless of the reporting system, the student knows that he or she is trying to hit a certain mark of proficiency. That's the expectation from the teacher, that's the expectation from you at home, and that's what they begin to work towards. So think about this in terms of grades and grading. How are they used across our district and across the diocese and across the state? Are they used to reward students? Do they get something for earning high grades? Are they used to punish students? Do you take away something if they don't get what you expect? Do you use them to control and change behaviors to get what you're looking for? Do we use them to understand achievement? Do you use them to compare your son's or daughter's progress to another child's from the school or from the neighborhood? Do we use them as a status marker? So as we think about these core components, we think about what parts really come with the reported grade and what part comes with what we do with the grade, how we use it once it's reported out and we have it. Ask yourself this question. If you're thinking about the grades as the motivating factor, which core component, if any, that's presented above is a part that's connected to the reporting out of the grade that a student might really be working towards or working to avoid? We have a system where we can report out mastery and exceeding mastery of learning, progressing towards mastery, beginning steps. We don't report it out as A, B, C, C's, or A's. If the student is motivated to earn an A, then she or he is motivated to excel at the top level. I said to some teachers a couple of weeks ago, you know, if we decided in this country that from now on an A was a W, and a B was an X, and a C was a Y, and a D was a Z, we would in no time have students walking around going, I want a W, I want a W. Because it's the reporting out system. And so if we change the reporting out system, kids would fall in line and say, this is what I'm working towards. If what it all represents is mastery of the learning, we have that covered here. We have that covered extremely well. If a student is motivated to improve performance, then she or he is motivated to see better results. If you say, I got a C, that's unacceptable, I want a B, then you're motivated to see results that you're improving. And we have that covered here. We have a system of reporting out that absolutely shows that. If others motivate a student to want an A, because your best friend got one, or somebody on your team got one, or in your neighborhood, or if others motivate a student to improve, maybe you at home, or grandma, grandpa, an older sibling, then the motivation we know becomes external, because the motivation is coming from you. I always tell my pre-service teachers at Ohio State, part of the story of teaching, it's a very complex profession, but one thing we can reduce to pretty simple, and that's this. If the gap between what you need and want students to do and where they're currently residing, what they're willing to do, is as such that they decide, this is too big of a gap. I'm not willing to work hard enough to get to here because for whatever reason, whatever this represents, I don't want it, I don't need it, or I'm not going to work toward it. And we know that part of what we do every day as parents, as guardians, as teachers, is help students understand how to close that gap. We say things like, you may not understand why this is important today, but this is very important for you. You're going to need this in your future. You're going to need this because we know that sometimes students see the gap between where we need them to be and where they currently are. They're assessing that gap saying, too much work. So we bridge it. We bridge that gap by offering external motivators that we hope will help the students make good decisions. And we've got that covered in our reporting system that we use. If motivation is designed as the desire to achieve a goal that has value for the individual, then we need to think about that. If the student is valuing excelling at a high level, then he or she is working hard in doing so, or attempting to do so. If a student isn't working hard, or isn't performing at the level we know he or she is capable of, then we have to ask ourselves, is the desire to achieve the goal, that is, mastery or exceeding mastery, showing that I've learned it, that I know it, that I can do it? If there's no desire to do that, or it's not happening, we have to step back and ask ourselves why. Sometimes parents will say, well, because the reporting system, they want to get this A, they want to get this B, they want to get this C. But students aren't always working to earn those kinds of things. And those kinds of things are reporting out systems. And we've got that covered. A line of research from Schunk, a researcher heavily cited in this area, states that student goal setting considering an objective to meet, the criteria to meet it, and the support to make progress, and most importantly, the belief that success is attainable has been shown more than any other factor to increase motivation. And when I look at that definition and I think about the great work that's happening with our students here at St. Bridget, with our teachers, our administrators, I ask myself, in the reporting out system that we use, are we in line with this line of research for motivating our students to do well? Do students get a chance to do goal setting? Absolutely. They take part in it all the time. I know that you have student-led conferences coming up here in the winter quarter, and how exciting that'll be for your sons and daughters to talk to you about the things they're learning, the goals they've set, and how they're working hard to achieve them. Do we have it covered that we consider what the objective is to meet? Always. Students have learning targets, they have rubrics, they know the criteria up front of what is expected. Do we give them the criteria to meet it? Absolutely. They know what shapes their performance, they know what they have to do to excel. Do we support them to make progress? Every day. Every day with formative feedback that we use for students so that they always can say to themselves, I know where I am today and I know my next step. And most importantly, do we inspire them, and you know how hard you work at this at home, where this all begins. Do we inspire them to believe that success is going to be attainable? Without a doubt. Those factors have been shown to greatly impact motivation. So we have a couple of stories, one of the student John and one of the student Sarah. And John is the type of student who, he doesn't really have time to do the homework. He doesn't do the homework very often each night. He dabbles in a little guided practice when you offer it to him in the class. But whenever you give him a summative assessment, he hits it out of the park, and he shows you that he's mastered every core component of the learning. He's one of those students that says, I don't really do the homework because I don't need to, and I have an A all the time in my classes. Or in our system, I have the highest level of achievement that I could have. And then you have a student like Sarah, who works so hard, and she's constantly working to do her very best. If she can find you in the hallway to ask a quick question, she does. If she can come in early to get a little extra assistance, she does so. You know that her effort is absolutely stellar. But her summative picture always shows her to be making progress and not really ever moving towards mastery. So in a grading traditional system, she may earn a C or a D if we report out only on the achievement of learning. But she may earn a B or even higher if we want to try to use the grades to encourage her to be able to stick with it and do better. Motivational effects of grades have definitely been shown to be unpredictable. No one can stand in front of you and say, if we didn't use a system of A, B, C in this building, that your child might not be motivated to want to earn an A. Because individual motivation is something that comes from inside. And you may motivate your student at home to want to get those kinds of high marks. We contend that we have those kinds of things in place. But we would never be presumptuous to say that what motivates your child isn't something that you know best, working with your child at home every day. We also know those factors of motivation are wide and varied across our audience tonight. Knowing that they're unpredictable, and knowing that they often correlate more with the value placed upon them by those who hope they will in fact motivate a child, that comes from a line of research from Rick Stiggins. We know then that your good work at home to motivate your student to want to excel, to motivate your student to want to do the very best, is really the component that inspires him or her externally, and we connect with that in school to want to help your child achieve at the highest level.